Hello everyone, welcome to part 3. This is gonna be the last part of this character design and color video. So here I'm quickly showing you guys the preview of the last part 1 and part 2 for those of you who haven't watched part 1 and part 2. So in part 1, I used simple geometric shapes to design this line character, and then I also jump into color. I also show how I block the color and come up with a rough base color. In part 2, you'll see me painting details and how I treat the textures as well. So if you guys haven't watched part 1 and part 2 yet, I would definitely recommend to go back to part 1 and part 2 before you checking out this video. And if you guys are still okay, it's fine. You can just watch this one. Whenever you feel like you would like to go back to check part 1 and part 2, you can definitely do that. And here we start part 3. So what I wanted to share with you in this video in part 3 is I think it's just something that I like to do sometimes when I design characters. Rather than having just one characters, I like to provide him where he lives and where he's from, you know, like, so just adding small simple details, the locations and place that, you know, he might be living at. I think this can be a very cool idea for illustrations or concept art. So yeah, that's kind of something that I'm doing right now. And yeah, so I was imagining about this character. He's a lion characters, and you know, he lives maybe in around maybe safari. So in that location, you know, there's some dry branches and rocks and pebbles in the field. So that's kind of like what I'm doing right now. Also for the design of the small elements, I also treat them as part of the design. So even small little details, I like to keep it nice, clean and slick design. Even with the color. So you'll see me, you know, like, I mean, there's like a white branch, there's a gray branch, light orange, brownish branch. So those colors stay similar, warm color palette. I don't want to go too crazy with color or, you know, adding, you know, complete different color that is off than warm color, because the background elements is not the focal point, right? So, you know, I am thinking like, okay, I want to add a background, I want to add a background element, but I still want the character to be popped. So because of that, I decided to also add more brighter and a little more saturation onto his face and his teeth. And I use hue and saturation from small circle icon on the bottom of the layer. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I decided to fill out some gaps on the bottom of his mouth. And then I think it looks better with the gap filled in. Moving on to shadows underneath. Even though it's a flat design, just by adding some shadows underneath, it gives some depth and some volume. And yeah, it's nice to have some of that. So now here I'm really just going back to some of the details, and I add some line texture on his tails and adjust some colors. And now I'm moving on to the line texture on his body, his arms. I think at this time what I thought is like, okay, you know, I know the texture is there, but what if, you know, I always have a thought of in my mind, what if I could, you know, change the line texture on his body to a little brighter color, you know, maybe it could have slightly different variation and that could look more interesting, and which it does. So I really like what it is, and I really like how I changed the color, and I decided to leave it like that. Just before finishing up this piece, I feel like there should be different elements instead of having multiple repetitive branches or small pebbles and rock textures, I decided to add something unique elements there. So I add a dry oud. And that's pretty much it for today. And if you guys haven't watched part 1 or part 2, and if you guys are interested in going back to check in, definitely do that. And also I'll be sharing more contents like this with different characters and also props, environment design. And I recently interviewed some of the artists and friends I know in Toronto, Canada. So yeah, if you guys are interested in this type of contents, and yeah, please subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.